WWT presents Experts.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of WWT Experts. I'm your host, Matthew Coble, and excited to be here today with two experts from Worldwide Technology to talk about life sciences organizations, because they are now prime targets for cyber attacks, given the volumes of data they hold, the intellectual property they own, and the complex operational environments that are really core to their businesses. So today in our discussion, we're going to talk about the security landscape and the life sciences industry, touch on things like trends and the impacts of data breaches that we're seeing out there, some of the best practices that organizations are employing for operational technology environments, and the importance of cyber resilience, and much, much more. So we've got two experts with us today. First up, Dr. Sanaz Cortez, who is Chief Healthcare Advisor and Global Life Sciences Practice Lead here at Worldwide Technology. Dr. Cortez began her career as a physician and a medical director with Providence Health. Since then, she's been an entrepreneur, an investor, a venture advisor, and an industry expert in both healthcare and life sciences. So we're delighted she's here today to talk with us about this topic. Also with us, Scott Pochay is a security sales advisor with Worldwide Technology. He's got over 20 years of expertise and experience in the technology industry, and he really focuses his attention these days on enterprise cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. More specifically, he's helping clients tackle critical things like zero trust, cyber resiliency, and application security. And obviously that's all the more challenging these days with all that's going on with artificial intelligence. So delighted to have you both with us. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Sure. Okay, so Sanaz, let's start with you. So what are you seeing as the current threat landscape in the life sciences industry?
Yeah, so pharma continues to rank among the top 3 industry verticals for the costliest security breaches and data breaches. In 2023, the average cost of a breach was about $4.8 million. So pretty steep there. And as we look at sort of the leadership at these organizations and what they're thinking about, I mean, cybersecurity is definitely a top concern. CIOs have ranked it, 75% of them have ranked it as their number one concern for their organizations going into the new year. And about half of those organizations have experienced an intrusion that impacted either their OT systems or their IT and OT systems as well. And many of them have had more than 6, a year compared to about only 11% last year. So kind of wanted to share some stats that I refreshed because it really sort of paints the picture of it's a serious problem, it's a costly problem, leadership thinks it's a problem, and there's a lot that can be done and needs to be done moving forward. And so when we kind of talk about, why pharma is challenged with security, there's a handful of things that come to mind. They are very much at the forefront of integrating new technology. So a lot of the conversations we're having with our clients, they're putting in new things like AI, they're integrating, more and more medical devices. So there's a lot of technology integrations and new things being introduced to their environment. Also, pharma is an industry that works with a myriad of partners. Their work is not really confined necessarily within their own organization, but they're dealing with collaboration partners, CROs, and then they've got this sort of complex, lengthy supply chain that's just so dependent and has so many bifurcations of the process before it goes from basically bench to the hands of the patient that's going to be consuming it or having it implanted, depending on the type of organization. And I know Scott will probably go into a lot more detail, but it's an OT-centered business, a manufacturing business, and so that introduced a whole host of other technology risks, cyber technology risks that you may not necessarily see in a business that's just, pure software or something like that. So, all these things are their kind of unique challenges. And so that makes them a target for cyber criminals. And then there's a lot of things about them that's attractive in addition to that for the cyber criminals. As we know, they've got valuable IP. They're doing cutting edge research to try to get a therapeutic to market first. So obviously very, very valuable information there. And then all the patient information from the trials and from EHR records that put them in the same category as all the healthcare institutions that are unfortunately being hit. So that's kind of what makes them a target from one perspective. And then again, with the OT, thousands of industrial attack vectors, right, within their OT systems, their lab facilities, storage warehouses. So those are pretty risky points of vulnerability. And then they're also just constantly grappling with making sure they're ahead of the developing regulations. I mean, that space itself is also not fully matured. So global standards, national standards, data privacy laws, those are constantly in flux. And so they're having to, not only kind of fly the plane, right, but just kind of keep rebuilding it as they're doing that. And I think, the OT parts of businesses are kind of notoriously underdeveloped in their cybersecurity solutions. There's a kind of a communication gap between the IT and OT orgs in these companies. And then there's just like a shortage of people who are experts, right? Shortage of OT security professionals. So there's a lot going on in the landscape. And I know Scott will have a happier twist because he can probably offer some, next steps and solutions, but kind of wanted to get you guys up to date on what's going on going into 2024. Bye.
Yeah. Scott, anything to build on that?
Yeah. I mean, all good points there. I mean, I think the uniqueness when you look at life sciences in the pharma industry is you have both IT, IoT, and OT environments. So instead of traditional IT environments where you have more of a robust solution set already built, bringing in IoT, bringing in OT adds just another whole flavor of things you have to protect. That whole threat landscape now is just expanded exponentially. When you look at IoT specifically, it's typically 10x the number of devices than what you have on the IT side. So if you look at your sensors, your cameras, components that keep your refrigeration of your cells and solutions up to at the right temperatures are all key areas that you have to protect, and they're all valuable targets for your threat actors. As Dr. Cortez mentioned, when we look at why OT might be more vulnerable, it is because they have a high value target. There's sensitive information there that these threat actors want to get. But not only that, they may want to come in and disrupt that manufacturing process and hold those companies for ransom. So again, it's a big, highly valued target for threat actors. Then if you look at just the kind of cybersecurity frameworks and solutions they have in place, they're typically behind what IT does because security's never been their forefront. It's always been about manufacturing. So they're running maybe not as a robust solutions that you would see on the IT side of the house. And then you also have systems that are running legacy solutions that either haven't been patched in years or can't be patched. So they're vulnerable to attacks because they just can't be disrupted. So you have to understand how to basically work around those pieces and build a cybersecurity practice that can help with that. And then lastly, because there's such rich information over there, we're seeing a lot between IT and OT interconnectivity. So the business is looking to gather that information and help, from a reporting standpoint, different metrics they want to get. So as IT and OT come together, now you're starting to open up that OT environment, making them more vulnerable to attacks they typically haven't seen in the past, especially where the OT side has typically, again, less solutions in place, a much weaker segmentation setup as well. So it allows for that threat actor to come in, get into the OT environment and propagate, and then really impact that client's environment.
Mm-hmm. Well, Scott, I'm curious to know whether you're seeing the IT teams, the OT teams collaborating effectively. Are they sort of bridging that gap and partnering with one another to be more effective with this? And what are some of the newer approaches that these organizations are using? You mentioned segmentation. I'm thinking about that, zero trust, and some other newer approaches to security. What's that looking like?
Yeah, traditionally, what we're seeing a lot, especially in these larger pharmaceutical companies, IT and OT have not always been sharing, best practices. We're starting to see more and more of that come together again because of this interconnectivity, because they want to get that data that's out there. So you're starting to see, from a segmentation standpoint, more things being brought into play. And what I think the IT team's helping the OT folks is you can't really have a good micro-segmentation or any type of segmentation play until you have good visibility and observability of your environment. So you need to understand what your assets are, what the status of those assets are, categorize them properly, and then be able to implement policies so that you can actually protect them. So I think from the OT side, they're learning from IT. IT usually has a better asset management than the OT side has. The old adage, you can't protect what you can't see, is totally true here. So once they have the ability to understand what they have in their environment and again, classify those properly, then they can look to implement a micro segmentation strategy, which is really just about segmenting down or sectioning off their network into more contained environments where they can actually put security policies in place. That's going to allow these admins, network security admins, to put in security practices and policies to help stop or limit the data traffic that's going to each one of these areas and follow principles of least privilege and zero trust. Again, with microsegmentation, our whole goal here is to really reduce the blast radius. We can't always stop an attack, but certainly we can help mitigate the risk and minimize the impact, which is the real goal here. So microsegmentation allows that, and we're seeing a lot more of that coming into the OT side, learning from the principles of zero trust that IT already has today.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sanaz, at the top of the show, you shared some really kind of staggering stats about the numbers of breaches that are out there. I'm curious if you could elaborate a little bit more on that. What kinds of breaches are happening? What are the impacts of those? And are these life sciences organizations doing a good job recovering? What's the state of cyber resiliency going on?
Yeah, sure. I can talk about the impacts. So again, pharma breaches, top 3 costliest industries. To put it in a different sort of metric perspective, I found this kind of startling. Downtime costs these organizations about $100,000 to $300,000 per hour. Mm. So, it has impact, right? This is a terrible thing to happen in general, but for these organizations, it can be, debilitating. And ransomware attacks are still the primary, type of intrusion. And one of the best publicized breaches that we've seen in the last couple of years was Merck. They had 30,000 computers taken down by a ransomware attack. And you talk about impact. It halted drug production, it halted their business, and cumulatively, the damages reached about $870 million. So, it's impactful. And then when you think about the downstream consequences of that, right? We talked about very complex supply chain, but in the end, the goal is to distribute very needed therapeutics, vaccines, to the public. And so those delays in shipments, those delays in arrivals to hospitals, inventory challenges, and then trickling down to the level of the physician, which is really at the end of the day, they don't even know kind of what's happening behind the scenes. They just know they have a patient, in front of them that needs a particular intervention, and, they can't access that. So it's a really bad situation for, like I said, any industry, but it's debilitating, I think, when it's, pharma and the healthcare space. But, and I can go into some actions about, what organizations can do better, but Scott, I'm going to let you kind of take that first, since you live and breathe it, or on the ground doing that with our clients.
Exactly. No, it's all good points. And we're not seeing a slowdown, if you will, in threat actors and attacks and incidents happening out there. We are seeing them being caught a little bit quicker, which is good, which means people are implementing security policies and practices that we're suggesting they do. One of the things we're talking to a lot of our customers about is really implementing a cyber resiliency program, not just around incident response where an attack comes in and you respond to that, but really building out your cyber resiliency program so that you look at your business critical systems and how do you bring them all back up in the event of an attack. Even if it's not a cyber-based attack, still, how do you bring those back up? And when we have conversations with our customers, it kind of goes to Dr. Cortez's point, what is the business impact? How long can your business be down? Is it an hour? Is it a day? Is it a week? All of those are going to dictate what type of cyber resiliency program you need to put in place. And when we look about cyber resilience, one thing I always want to talk to our customers about is it's not just about 1 or 2 applications. It's really about the whole process that brings that application, that business critical solution back in play. It's your network, it's Active Directory, it's DNS, all the pieces that make up for that. So having that understanding of what you need to basically build for resiliency, what you have to do from a vault strategy in terms of where you're taking your data, making sure it's immutable, because when you do have to recover that, it has to be available for you to actually get back up and running quickly. When we look at cyber resilience, there's really 4 key areas that we look at. One is all around anticipation. So understanding what your attack threat vectors are, understanding what your attack surface is, and then withstand. Do you have a strong cyber foundation in place to actually handle that? Recover. What do you have today? Do you have a recovery process? Do you have a whole plan in place? Do you have tools in place? Have you tested and validated, which is a key piece? I don't think a lot of our clients really think about that. They may have a run book. They think they've made it, and they'll dust it off once a year, maybe take a look at it. They truly need to do things like tabletops and validating that recovery process, and then adapt. So when you do have an actual event, how do you then streamline the process, make it better, and then continually improve upon that? So these are discussions we're having at great lengths with a lot of our customers, because I think they understand that if they're hit, it could be detrimental to their whole environment. And one thing that we talked about to one of our customers, or what we saw in one of our cases here, is they thought their recovery process was great. They had their teams together. They knew what was going to happen when they had an event. But what they didn't think about was the communication. So another piece that maybe not thinking about, they didn't realize that the threat actor had also implemented into their team's environment. So even though they got together, they had the right people in place, they were taking the right steps, the threat actor was listening in on their conversations and thwarting all of their attempts to fix these problems. So when we look at resiliency, you have to look at everything. How are you communicating with your teams? Not just are you bringing back your business critical solutions? So recovery resilience is all about that recovery piece, building out the environment properly, and making sure you're testing on a regular basis so you're ready when, and in fact, it probably will happen, unfortunately, nowadays with all the threat actors that we have out there. Yeah,
those are great points, Scott. And I just wanted to kind of double down again on the sort of the collaboration with so many third parties as you talk about, cyber resilience. There's vendor risk management, I think, is huge for this industry. Kind of, thorough cybersecurity assessments of these third-party vendors, and enforcing these strict security, protocols across organizations. And then also with the increased collaboration, right? We've seen that coming out of the pandemic, more companies working together to bring these therapeutics. I think just making sure that these, platforms, as you mentioned, like Teams, but just other data communication and data sharing platforms are really bolted down and really secure.
This episode is brought to you by Proofpoint. Proofpoint helps protect people, data, and brands against cyber attacks, offering compliance and cybersecurity solutions for email, data loss, cloud, and more.
All right, well, Scott, I want to come back to you for a moment, because I know, you're speaking about, the conversations you're having with clients, but also know that here at Worldwide Technology, we have our Advanced Technology Center, AI Proving Ground, and a lot of the capabilities here to have our clients, test things out and sort of explore possible solutions. So I'm curious whether that stuff that we've got on site here has contributed to some of the work that you're doing in helping clients explore how to address some of the topics we're talking about today.
And they certainly do. And from a cyber resiliency standpoint, just as we were talking about, we usually factor in using the ATC to test or help them test and evaluate vendors, especially from a vault strategy perspective, and then also helping them do tabletops and how they can actually do more testing on their own. Sometimes our clients don't have the environment ready to do so. So they're going to leverage us to do some of that testing for them, to help them, again, whether it's evaluating vendors, whether it's evaluating the process, and then helping them walk through a complete tabletop so that we show them how to test this out. So when we do these workshops, our cyber resiliency workshops, we incorporate the ATC a lot of times to help with the evaluation, testing, and then walk them through how best to ensure their programs are solid and make any recommendations to those. It's a great way for us to help where I don't think other vendors have, or other folks can actually do what we do within the ATC.
Mm-hmm. And for those of you, listening in, if you're not familiar with our Advanced Technology Center, you can head off to wwt.com to learn more about the ATC and all that's there. Okay, I got to bring artificial intelligence into this conversation, right? I know that it's been important in the life sciences space for many, many years, going back well before, all of us got super excited about it a couple years ago with Gen AI. But I'm curious how companies' AI investments are, threatening the security posture they have. Are we using AI to improve security? Is security affecting AI? What's going on with AI in this space, and how does security fit into that?
Sure. As you mentioned, AI has been around. I swear every time I open my laptop, it's all about AI. Every time there's something new and exciting and you're trying to keep up with it. And I know that if I'm having some challenges trying to keep up with it, so are our clients. So we have a lot of conversations with our customers about where they are in their AI journey. And to your point, a lot of them have been doing stuff with machine learning for a number of years, but with the implementation of generative AI and even agentic AI as we're moving forward, there's a lot more challenges they're faced with. So we spend a lot of time consulting on that journey with our customers, not only how they're building their environment, but more in my wheelhouse, how they're securing that environment. So when we look at AI from a security standpoint, there's really two parts. It's one is how are they securing their AI environments from threat actors. And again, now you've got a bigger threat environment, bigger threat landscape because of AI. But what are they doing to stop things like prompt injections? Threat actors will come in and try to manipulate the prompt to get sensitive information out of that LLM model or the generative AI model. Or they'll try to poison that model, try to impact that model. So again, how do we help them with that security piece? And that's by offering things like a better AI governance, policies and procedures that we can work with to help them on that piece. On the flip side of that, you have how do we use AI in security? How do we take advantage of all these great tools to help us improve our response to issues? How do we actually look for more information? How do we help our analysts go out there and decipher where there's vulnerabilities and quickly patch and fix those vulnerabilities so they don't become an issue? So you really have two different sides of the coin when we talk about AI. Another thing we're seeing a lot of, and we're talking a lot about, is deep fakes. And deep fakes are impacting a number of different verticals. Of course, in the life sciences, if the deep fake comes in and they have to respond to every single call that comes in if there's a complaint for some type of product, how do you know it's a deep fake versus a non-deep fake? So we're working with a number of our customers to help them evaluate vendors and evaluate these deep fakes, not only just from a voice perspective, but also other modalities. Could be text, could be video, apps like WhatsApp that are used a lot outside of the US. How do we know if it's truly a deep fake, and how do we help them identify and then block or prevent that from happening? And a lot of this stems over to what we just talked about a minute ago in our ATC. So we have our AI Proving Ground, which is an extensive environment that allows us to help customers build out their environment, test their environment, whether it's a cloud, on-prem, hybrid approach. And then also within that is the deep fake components. So we can help customers look at deep fake samples to determine, is it truly a deep fake, is it not a deep fake, evaluate different vendors that have solutions in those areas, and then help them build their own lab. So there's a lot of ways we can help from an AI perspective when it comes to security.
Mm-hmm. All right, last question I want to ask both of you, and Sanaz, I'll start with you. I'm thinking about, suppose we're gathering together some executives from a life sciences organization, from, the business, from tech, all those folks. And we're kind of looking at the current state of the security landscape and looking at where it's going to go in the next, 2 years, 5 years. Like, what are some key things that you would be advising those executives to be thinking about to make sure they've got a good security posture now and they're prepared for that future state?
Yeah, so, I think in addition to the things we talked about, like proactive measures, the segmentation, all of those types of actions, and then the visibility, supply chain, what I see when I'm in these kind of executive briefings and I'm coming in more at the business level and just talking about what the scientists are doing and what the commercial is doing, I hear their perspectives, right? Like when they are given a security protocol or security app, it's never a happy thing, right? It's like one more step that they have to do when they log on or when they, interact with their technology. And there's often a really big gap there between the businesses and the things that IT and the CISO's office know are important. So, I just like to kind of comment on that usually in these sessions and say, building this sort of culture of cybersecurity awareness, making it something that is now somewhat democratized and sharing that, I don't want to say burden, but the responsibility, right, with the business and kind of making them feel more empowered and bringing them into that, and then just creating this sort of cohesive culture across the organization that is cybersecurity awareness, I think is key, really for both sides to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with that piece. It's really about, you can't keep cybersecurity in a box. And when you're talking about the life sciences, again, we talked about IT, IoT, and OT. They all have to come together. They have to share what they have out there to make each piece even more secure and impactful. And when we look at how do we look forward? What are we going to be doing from an AI perspective? Well, again, God knows what's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months. It's all about building out a training program and empowering your teams to understand and learn about the newest and latest technologies that are out there, so they continue to help to prevent and thwart attacks that are coming in. So cyber awareness, more collaboration between all the different groups that are out there, and then just try to stay ahead of the curve as best possibly you can.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, this has been a great session. Sanaz, Scott, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for coming as well. Another great episode of WWT Experts, and one in a series we have about life sciences. So if you enjoyed this, you can check those out, and plenty more out on WWT.com. Lots of video on demand that you can watch anytime, and a good calendar of stuff that's coming up soon. Love to hear your feedback. So if you get a survey, let us know, or drop us an email and let us know how we did today. And with that, we will wrap today's session. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.